Hello and welcome. I'm Ismail, and this session is about challenge that almost every growing company eventually faces. How do we build one team that when our people work across cities, countries, cultures, contracts, and time zones? For a long time, companies treated distributed work as a temporary arrangement or a logistical exception. The assumption was that the real company existed in one office and everyone else was somehow working around the center of gravity. That assumption no longer works. Today, a company may hire a designer in Lisbon, a sales leader in Toronto, an engineer in Nairobi, a finance partner in Singapore, and a founder who works between several locations. This can be an extraordinary advantage. You can access more talent, serve customers more efficiently, create more resilient operations, and build a company that is less dependent on one local labor market. But global work does not automatically create a global team. A global team is not a collection of people who happen to have Zoom accounts. It is a system of shared expectations. It is a set of decisions about where clarity lives, how work moves, who decides when people overlap, how managers make room for local expertise, and how the company measures health without turning every employee into a dashboard. The central idea of this presentation is simple. Distance is not the core management problem. Ambiguity is. If people does not know who owns a decision, work stalls. If handoffs are visible, projects drift. If rules are inconsistent, trust erodes. If local knowledge is ignored, leaders make bad decisions with confidence. If time zones are treated as inconveniences, some people become permanently exhausted. And if the company only measures output, it may miss burnout, exclusion, and attrition until it's too late. So I want to offer a manager operating system called Rhythm. It's practical, repeatable, and designed for people ops, HR leaders, founders, and managers who need a way to lead globally without creating a 24-hour workday. By the end, you'll have a framework, a fictional case example, a first 30 days manager charter, and a way to think about the operational questions that global employment and contract management can raise. Let's begin with the real problem we are trying to solve. When teams first become distributed, they often try to solve every problem with more communication, more meetings, more channels, more status updates, more quick calls, more follow-ups, more manager check-ins. But communication volume is not same as coordination quality. In fact, when a team lacks a clear operating system, more communication can make the situation worse. People spend more time explaining work than doing work. Critical decisions move into private chats. The people with the best overlap hours become overloaded. The people outside the informal center becomes less viable, less visible, and managers mistake responsiveness for engagement. I have seen a familiar pattern. The company hires internationally because it wants flexibility and access to talent. Then, almost unintentionally, it recreates an office centered culture online. Meetings are scheduled around headquarters, important decisions happen live. Team members who cannot attend are told they can catch up in the recording. Promotion opportunities go to people who are present in the most conversations. The company calls this global work, but it is really local work with remote participants. This is not inclusion, it is proximity bias delivered through a calendar. The alternative is not to eliminate live interaction. Human connection matters and real time collaboration matters. The alternative is to be intentional about what must happen live, what should happen asynchronously, what information must be documented, and what protection managers need to create for people whose normal workday begins when somebody else is ending theirs. A strong global operating system does three things. First, it makes work legible. A person should be able to understand the goal, the owner, the decision, the deadline, and the next step without needing to be in the room. Second, it makes contribution equitable. The team should not reward the loudest voice, the fastest reply, or the people nearest to headquarters. It should reward clear outcomes, good judgment, collaborations, and dependable execution. Third, it makes human limits visible. Global teams do not need heroic availability, they need sustainable agreements. This is why I use the word operating system. We are not talking about a single policy or tool. We are talking about a repeatable way of working that helps good people do good work across distance. Rhythm is a seven-part framework for making global work more intentional. The first R is roles. People need to know Rhythm is a seven-part framework for making global work more intentional. The first R is roles. People need to know who owns that, who owns what, who contributes, who decides, and who needs to be informed. In distributed teams, fuzzy ownership becomes expensive very quickly because people cannot simply lean over and resolve uncertainty. H is handoffs. Work crosses functions, countries, time zones, and working styles. A handoff should not be a vague message which says, over to you. It should be a structured transfer of context, decision, status, and next action. The second R is rules. Global teams need explicit working agreements, not rules for control, but rules that reduce unnecessary friction. How quickly more people expected to respond, which channels are used for what does a decision record look like, how are meetings scheduled, what is it, when is it acceptable to say no. Why is yield to local expertise? Global does not mean centrally dictated. It means leaders create a consistent company direction while allowing local expertise to shape execution. Local knowledge about talent markets, culture, communication, customer expectation, holidays, and practical realities is not a footnote. It is part of the strategy. T is time zones. Time zones should be designed for not merely tolerated. Someone always pays when a meeting spans the world. The management question is whether the cost is distributed fairly and whether the meeting truly needs to happen. H is human movements. Teams need more than productive updates. People need recognition, belonging, room for context, opportunities to build trust that are not reserved for those who can attend informal office moments. Finally, M is metrics. We need to measure whether the operating system is working. That includes business outcomes, yes, but also workload health, participation patterns, clarity, retention signals, and whether global employees have equitable access to opportunity. You do not need to implement rhythm all at once. Start with one team, one operating pain point, and one shared practice. But the framework helps you see how the pieces connect. The first principle is roles. In a collocated office, unclear roles can sometimes be patched with hallway conversations, informal relationships, or the fact that everyone can see who is doing what. In global teams, that ambiguity spreads silently. A project can appear active because there are messages, meetings, and documents, but if no one has clear accountability, it is not actually a moving. For every meaningful initiative, I recommend naming five things. First, the accountable owner. This is the person responsible for moving the work forward. They do not need to do every task and they may not have the final authority on every issue, but they are responsible for momentum, coordination, and clarity. Second, the decision maker. Sometimes the accountable owner and decision maker are the same person, sometimes they are not. What matters is that the people know who has the authority to make the call when trade-offs appear. Third, contributors. These are the people who provide expertise, execute work, test assumptions, or shape the recommendation. Contributors should be named specifically, not invited vaguely. Fourth, informed stakeholders. People do not need to be involved in every decision to be respected. Often, what they need is visibility into the decision, its rational, and what changes because of it. Fifth, the escalation path. What happens when the team is blocked? How long should the owner attempt to resolve the issue before escalation? Who is the next person to involve? This may sound basic, but it changes behavior. It shifts team from I thought someone else had that to I know who wants the next move. As a manager, I also want to distinguish ownership from availability. Owning an initiative does not mean answering messages at all hours. Ownership means creating an appropriate plan, communication status, surfacing risks early, and driving decisions. A simple practice is to add a short ownership block to every project brief. Objective, owner decision maker, contributors, next decision, and review date. Clear roles are not bureaucracy, they are a form of respect. The next principle is handoffs. In global work, handoffs are where momentum is either created or lost. Think about a team working across North America, Europe, and Asia Pacific. If one person completes work at the end of their day and simply sends here's the latest version, they have not really handed anything off. The next person must spend time reconstructing context. What changed? When is it still uncertain? Is feedback needed? Is this ready for review? Is there a deadline? Which document is current? That reconstruction time compounds across the organization. A good handoff is not merely a transfer of files, it is a transfer of understanding. I encourage team to use a six-part handoff format. One, current state, when it is what is complete, in progress, blocked, or awaiting a decision. 2. What changed? What is different since the last update and why does it matter? 3. Decision needed. If the next person needs to make a call, state the decision explicitly. Do not bury it at the bottom of a long message. 4. Deadline. When is a response or action needed and what happens if the deadline slips? 5. Source of truth. Link to the one document, ticket, project page, or workspace that contains the current version. Avoid creating a scavenger hunt across the chat threads. 6. What good looks like. Describe the intended outcome. A clear standard is much more useful than please take a look. For example, instead of writing, can you review the lunch plan when you have time? A stronger handoff would say, the launch plan is ready for regional review. We need to go no go. We need a no go decision on the proposed date by Wednesday 16:00 UTC. Please confirm whether local customer communication require changes. The current plan is linked here. A successful review identifies any regional risk, owners, and required timing changes. That message respects the recipient's name and lets work continue without a meeting. Managers should inspect handoffs during retrospectives. If work is repeatedly delayed, do not ask who was late. Ask whether the handoff carried enough context for the next person to act. Let message respect the recipient's time and let work continue without a meeting. Managers should inspect handoffs during retrospectives. If work is repeatedly delayed, do not ask only who was late. Ask whether the handoff carried enough context for the next person to act confidently. The second R is rules. When a team says we value flexibility, it should ask flexibility for whom and under what shared expectations. Without clear rules, flexibility can become anxiety. People do not know whether a message requires an immediate response. They do not know whether silence means agreement or absence. They do not know whether a decision in chat is final. They do not know whether a declining a late meeting will affect how they are perceived. Working agreements solve this by making the invisible explicit. Start with response time expectations. Not every message deserves the same urgency. A team can define what belongs in an urgent channel, what can wait until the next working day, and what should live in a project system rather than chat. The objective to not make everyone slower, it is to make urgency credible. Next, define channel purpose. Chat is useful for coordination. It is usually poor long-term archive for important decision. Documents are useful for proposals and contacts. Project tools are useful for work status. A team does not need a perfect taxonomy, but it does need enough consistency that people know where to look. Then establish a documentation standard. When do decisions need a written record? What should be included at a minimum? I like decision records that state the decision, the owner, the date, the rationale, and any follow-up actions. This is especially important for people who could not attend a live conversation. Meeting norms matter too. Every meeting should have a purpose, a facilitator, a pre-read where appropriate, and an outcome. If someone cannot attend, they should know whether their input is required beforehand and whether the meeting will be documented and how they can challenge or add the result. Finally, name quiet hours and escalation rules. Managers should never leave employees to guess whether they are expected to answer during personal time. There will be legitimate expectations, exceptions, but exceptions should be defined, limited, and handled with care. The goal is not to write a rule book for every human interaction. The goal is to eliminate the avoidable ambiguity that drains attention and trust. Yield to local expertise is one of the most important and most overlooked principles in global management. As companies grow internationally, central teams often seek consistency. That instinct is understandable. Leaders want a coherent brand, a clear culture, fair practices, predictable processes, and reliable reporting. But consistency can become over centralization when leaders confuse one standard with one way of doing everything. The people closest to a local market often know things that the headquarter cannot see. They may understand candidate expectations, language nuance, local business customs, customer buying patterns, cultural norms around feedback, public holidays, season workload changes, or the practical limits of a policy designed elsewhere. Yielding does not mean giving up accountability. It means designing the informed adaptation. I encourage readers to ask four questions before rolling out a global initiative. First, who knows this market best? Not who has the most senior title, but who has direct current context. Second, what assumption may be headquartered centric? A process that feels natural to the people who designed it may feel confusing, impractical, or exclusionary elsewhere. Third, what must be adopted locally? The answer may involve language, timing, and communication format, benefit expectation, hiring practices, customer messaging, or the pace of implementation. Fourth, who should challenge this decision? Good global leadership creates a formal invitation for dissent before a decision becomes expensive to reverse. This matters in people, ops, and HR specifically. A global policy can establish principles, but implementation often requires local review and appropriate specialist input. Managers should not improvise legal, tax, employment, or other regulated decisions based on general guidance from another market. Instead, they should know when to involve internal specialists or qualified local advisors. Yielding to local expertise is also cultural. It means not treating directness, silence, speed, hierarchy, or meeting expectation on meeting participation as universal indicators of competence or commitment. The best global leaders have conviction about outcomes and humility about methods. They can say, here is the problem you need to solve. Help us understand the best way to solve it in your context. This is how a global company becomes more intelligent as it grows. Time zones are not a scheduling issue. They are a power issue, a well-being issue, and an operating design issue. Whenever a company has people across several time zones, company is more likely to be asked to work outside standard local hours. If the same people are always making that sacrifice, the company has quietly created a hierarchy of inconvenience. This is why I say overlap is a scarce resource. Treat it as something variable. Use it for the work that truly benefits from real-time interaction. Complex decisions, productivity, creative problem solving, relationship building, coaching, sensitive conversations, and moments where tone or trust matters. Do not spend precious overlap time reading updates are allowed, repeating information that could have been written, or watching people silently work through material they could have reviewed in advance. For status updates, drafts, routine feedback, project tracking, and documentation, asynchronous work is often better. It gives people time to think. It creates a record. It reduces the pressure to respond instantly, and it allows work to move while another part of the team is offline. A practical approach is to create a team time zone map, not just a list of locations, but a shared understanding of local working windows, overlap periods, public holidays, and my individual constraints people choose to share. Then agree on core collaboration windows where possible while being realistic that no signal window will be ideal for everyone. When meetings outside normal local hours are necessary, rotate the inconvenience. If a recurring meeting is early morning for one group and late for evening for another, rotate it on a predictable schedule. Do not rely on the same people to volunteer every time. Managers also need to model the behavior. If I send a message at an unusual hour, I can clarify I do not expect an immediate response. If I schedule across time zones, I can explain why the meeting needs to be live. If I repeatedly need a team member to work inconvenient hours, I should ask whether the arrangement is sustainable rather than assuming gratitude. A global team should not require anyone to prove commitment by being permanently reachable. The next stage is human movements. In distributed teams, it is easy to make work purely transactional. A manager sees tasks, deadlines, performance indicators, and meeting attendance. But people experience work as a social environment. They notice who is recognized, who is invited into decisions, whose holidays are acknowledged, whose communication style is respected, and whether it feels safe to surface a problem. Belonging is operational. It does not come from one on annual offsite or virtual coffee roulette alone. Those things can be useful, but they are not substitute for everyday inclusion. Human movements begin with recognition. Global teams should recognize contribution in ways that are visible across locations, but not only in office-based celebrations or casual conversations after a meeting. Recognition should also be specific. Great job is pleasant. Your handoff made it possible for the customer team to respond before the local morning helps people understand the value of their work. Connection also requires room for context beyond work. Managers do not need to demand personal disclosure, but they should create enough humanity that people can say that there is a major local holiday, my workday constrained today, or I need to adjust my schedule without feeling that they are creating a problem. Inclusive rituals matter. Team meetings can rotate facilitators, celebration can include remote colleagues by design, new hires can have intentional introduction, not just a messaging channel. Team norms can make space for people who process information differently or prefer contribution in writing. And when friction happens, repair matters. Global teams will have misunderstanding. Written communication can be misread. Different norms around directness can create tensions. Time zone delays can look like disengagement. A good manager does not rush to assign intent. I start with curiosity. What happened? What did each person understand? What was the impact, what agreement would help us work better next time. Human movements are not extra work after their real work. They are part of the system that makes real work possible. The final rhythm principle is matrix. Matrix are useful when they help us learn. They are harmful when they become a substitute for judgment, trust, or conversation. A global operating system should measure more than productivity. If we only measure output, we may miss the hidden cost of how the output is being produced. For example, a team may be delivering quickly, but only because a small group of employees consistently attends late night meeting. Another team may appear highly collaborative because it has many meetings, while the real result is decision fatigue. A manager may believe everyone has access to opportunity, while participation data shows that one location rarely presents to senior leaders or receives visible projects. So I recommend looking at a balanced set of signals. Start with delivery and quality. Our teams meeting commitments, are outcome strong, our project moving predictably. Then look at clarity. You can use pulse questions such as I know who makes decisions on my teams, or I understand what is expected of me next week. These are simple questions, but they reveal whether the operating system is understanding it. Look at handoff delays. Where does work wait? Is it waiting because of legitimate dependency, unclear ownership, missing context, approval bottlenecks, or time zone mismatch? Look at meeting load and after hours burden. Who attends meetings outside normal local working hours? Is that burden concentrated? Are people regularly declining meetings because the schedule is unreasonable, or are they attending at a personal cost? Look at participation patterns, who speaks in meetings, who contributes in written channels, who gets assigned high visibility work, who is promoted or moved into stretch opportunities. These questions should be approached carefully and with respect for privacy, but they are important. Finally, pay attention to retention, internal mobility, engagement feedback, and manager effectiveness by location or team where appropriate. The point is not to reduce people to data. The point is to use evidence to ask better questions. Metrics should lead to conversations, not surveillance. Let's make this concrete with a fictional company called Studio Meridian. Studio Meridian is a 42-person brand and product studio. Its team work across 9 countries and 4 major time zones. The company has grown quickly, large through referrals and remote hiring. The founders are proud of diversity of the team, but the operating model has not caught up with the growth. The immediate problem is a product launch that keeps slipping. At first, readers assume that issue is execution. Maybe the team is not moving fast enough. Maybe people need more accountability, so they add more status meetings. That makes the problem even worse. The team in the headquarters time zones now has multiple morning meetings each week. The team in another region joins late in the evening. A third group is expected to review recordings and then comment after decisions have already started to solidify. Marketing says product has provided final outputs. Product says regional feedback arrived too late. Leads say they were brought in after their key assumptions had already been made. Managers see delayed responses and interpret them as low urgency even when those responses occur outside normal local hours. Studio Meridian decides not to redesign the entire company at once. Instead, it runs a rhythm pilot with a launch team for 6 weeks. For roles, it creates a one-page launch brief. One launch owner coordinates the work. A named executive is the final decision maker for scope trade-offs. Regional leads are named contributors with explicit review responsibilities. Everyone knows the escalation path. For handoffs, the team introduces a launch update format. Current state changed since the last update, decision needed, deadline, source of truth, and the next owner. Updates are posted at agreed points rather than scattered through chat. For rules, it distinguishes urgent operational issues from normal work. It establishes a project page as a source of truth and requires material launch decisions to be documented. For yield, the team invites regional leads into planning earlier. Instead of asking to approve the finished plans, it asks them to identify assumptions that may not hold in their markets. For time zones, it reduces recurring meetings and resolve overlap for unresolved decisions. And for Matrix, the team tracks missed handoffs, decision turnarounds, meeting hours by local time, and a short pulse on road clarity. The result is not perfection. The team still has disagreements and deadlines, but the work becomes more visible, the burden becomes more fairly distributed, and managers stop treating presence as proof of performance. This is what a better operating system does. It does not eliminate complexity, it makes complexity manageable. For the next 6 minutes, I want to shift from the manager operating system to the operational foundation underneath. This is a conceptual segment about the deal. about Deel and the kinds of questions organizations may consider when they are building or evaluating global workforce operations. It is not legal, tax, employment, immigration, or compliance advice. Requirements vary by country, worker type, individual circumstances, and the way an organization operates. Any company should evaluate its own situation and seek appropriate qualified guidance. The reason this belongs in a management session is that the manager cannot create a healthy global workforce experience through communication norms alone. People, ops, finance, legal, operations, and managers need aligned processes. When organizations hire or engage people across borders, they commonly face questions such as what is the appropriate engagement model for this role? What local documentation or agreements may be needed? How will people be paid? How will workforce information be organized? Who can help the team understand location specific considerations? How can the company provide a consistent employee experience while acknowledging local differences? Deal is a platform associated with helping organization manage aspects of global workforce operation depending on organization's needs and services it chooses. The evaluation may include areas such as employment or engaging workers internationally, contractor management, payroll related workflows, HR processes, payments, workforce data, and access to expertise or resources. I have attached the deal, my deals referral link somewhere here. You can see it in the chat. You can use it to book a demo. So thank you for joining this scheduled pre-recorded broadcast. All registered candidates will receive the webinar details and some helpful documents. If you'd like to explore Deal as a part of your global workforce operations, you can use the link in the chat box. And if this session gave you one useful idea, I hope it is one team is not defined by one place, it is defined by a shared rhythm.